Robotics class, Lab 1, Objective 1. So in here we're going to build the circuit. And here we have a 5-volt connector from the Arduino board. It's going to be connected to a 220 ohm resistor. That resistor is also going to be connected to a push button, and then the push button is going to control the power to an LED light, and then the LED is also going to be connected back to the Arduino board to the ground. So let's build this circuit. And here are the parts that I need. So we need a breadboard. I already have put the push button in it because it's very small and difficult sometimes to put in. We have some jumper wires to connect from the Arduino board to the breadboard, the 220 ohm resistor, the LED light, and some other connectors that we might need. So we're going to use the red wire to connect from the 5 volts of the Arduino board, 5 volts, to the positive part of the breadboard. Then we're going to use, here's a resistor. It's going to go from the positive to one side of the push button. Then we're going to use a connector here so we can connect the LED light. Now the LED light, the flat area and shorter is the negative, and if we put it the wrong way it won't work. So the positive will continue with the circuit, and here's a positive and the negative, and then we're gonna use this connector to complete the circuit in the breadboard. So that goes to the negative part of the breadboard, and then the other jumper wire from the negative part of the breadboard to the ground and the Arduino board. And now we're going to power up the Arduino board by connecting it to the USB cable that is already connected to the computer. As you can see, there's a light, so that means there's power to the board. And if we press the button, it will light up the LED light. If we let it go, there is no power to the circuit. And that completes Objective 1. Robotics, Arduino Lab 1, Objective 2. So for this circuit, we're going to need 2 jumper wires, a breadboard with 2 push buttons, a 220 ohm resistor, a couple of connectors, an LED light, the Arduino board, and the USB cable. And the circuit looks like this. It's going to be connected to the 5 volts from the Arduino, to the 220 ohm resistor, to one push button, and then a connector to another push button, and the second push button will be connected to the LED light, and then back to the board to the ground. The purpose of this objective is that both push buttons will have to be pressed in order for the LED light to be turned on. So let's build this circuit. So I already have the push buttons there. Sometimes it's difficult to put in the breadboard. So here's the we're going to use the red jumper cable to connect the 5-volt port of the Arduino board to the positive part of the circuit. Put it right there. Then we're going to connect, let's turn it around, and then we're going to connect the resistor to the first push button and the positive part of the breadboard. Use one of these connectors to connect the two push buttons. Make sure they're connected to this switch, the push button right there, and this one right here. Then we are going to connect the LED light. The flat side is a negative, shorter leg, so this needs to be away from the push button, and this LED light is connected to the second push button. And then we're going to use this connector to complete the circuit, and connect it to the negative part of the breadboard. And then we need the other jumper wire to connect the negative to the ground on the circuit board. And now that everything is set, we'll power up the board. The light is on, there's power. If I press one button, the LED light doesn't turn. If I press the other button, the LED light doesn't turn, but if I press both, the LED light turns on. And when I'm not pressing, it turns off. Both buttons on, off. And that completes objective 2. Robotics Lab 1, objective 3. In this objective, we're going to build a different circuit where both buttons will have to be pressed in order, either button can be pressed or both can be pressed in order to light up the LED light. So we'll be connecting 5 volts from the Arduino board to a 220 ohm resistor. This resistor then is connected to both push buttons, and then both buttons will be back connected to the LED light, and the LED light goes back to the ground of the Arduino board. So let's build this circuit. And here are my parts. I have 2 jumper wires, the breadboard with 2 switches, 2 push buttons, the LED light, the 220 ohm resistor, some connectors, and the Arduino board USB port to power up the board. So we'll use the red jumper wire to connect to the 5 volt port on the Arduino board, and we'll connect that to the positive of the breadboard, Then we're going to connect the resistor from the positive to one of the switches, press buttons, and then we're going to use a connector to connect both press buttons together. Just moving the press buttons so they are both connected. Actually, I'm in the wrong place. This one needs to be connected to the resistor and the press button, and then there we go. Let's extend the leads a little bit. And we can connect the two press buttons together with that connector. Sometimes these press buttons can be a little bit tricky to use, they're so small. Then we need to connect the other part of the push button, this one here. So we're going to connect it right there. To the breadboard. Let's try to use it. There we go, so that we can see how this is connected. And then the other part of the press button, try this one here, to the same, there we go. And then we have the LED light that needs to be, so let's verify this is the flat side, so that's going to be to the ground or negative, and this is the positive, and like so. So these are all connected in the same section. The press button keeps coming out. And then finish the circuit by connecting the negative part of the LED to the negative part of the breadboard. And we use the black jumper wire to finish the circuit. So from the negative to the ground of the Arduino board. Here's the ground. And let's power it up by connecting the USB port to the board. There is power. So now the way it should work, if you press both buttons at the same time, the light turns on. As you can see, it works. If I just turn one, it works, the other one works, or both at the same time. And that concludes Objective 3. Lab 1, Objective 4, Blinking an LED using the Arduino board. Before I get started with this objective number 4, I would have to download the open source Arduino IDE software to allow me to program the board. In Arduino's main website, you will find a tab which says download, where you can get the open source program. There are choices depending on the operating system that you have. I have Windows, and I also have the administrative password to install the software, so I'm going to select Windows Installer. If you didn't have, and it's downloaded here down, it'll take about 4 or 5 minutes. If you did not have the administrative password to install the software, then you will use this other option, and that way you don't have to rely on having that password or somebody help you installing the software. So I already have downloaded the file, and we're going to install the program. I agree to the license, and I'm going to leave everything as a default and let it install all the files that I will need to run the software. Just click install. And as you can see, I have an icon on my desktop where I can access the software, so I'm going to close this window and double click on Arduino icon, and now I can start writing the commands that I need to download to the board. So before we write any programs to download to the board, we have to make sure that the Arduino board and is going to connect properly to the computer. So you need a USB port that will match this type of board. This one is also the same USB ports that you would use for a printer. This part here, it will be connected to the board, and then USB connection to your computer. Now let's take a look at the parts I'm going to need for this experiment. A breadboard, an LED, a 330 resistor that I have changed to a 220 resistor because that is what I had, the closest I had in my kit. Jumper wires, red one, black one, and an additional one, and of course the Arduino board. And let's not forget the USB port, because that will give the Arduino board the power. So let's build this circuit, and this is the circuit that we're going to work with. We have the jumper wires that are going from the Arduino board. The 5 volts is going to go to the positive of the breadboard. The ground, we use the black wire to go to the negative of the breadboard. And then we're going to have another jumper that in here says port 13, but we're going to use port 12 because Arduino UNO board is programmed to automatically flash on that port 13. And then that is going to connect to our LED to the positive, and then the negative is going to connect to the resistor that is also connected to the negative part of the circuit in the motherboard. So let's build this circuit. We're going to use the red wire and plug it into the 5 volts port. It's right here, and then that to the positive on the motherboard. By the way, all this is connected, so no matter where you put anything you put, it will be connected to that power. And then the black wire to your ground port, and we'll connect it to, let's just put it, it can be anywhere, so let's just put it there so we can see it. And then we're going to pick a place for the LED. Now the LED, this, let's see, this is the flat area, so that's where it needs to be connected to the negative part of the circuit. And then we're going to connect the resistor to the negative area of the board, and then connect it to the LED. These rows here, these are connected this way, and in the motherboard, and then these ones are connected this way. So that means that just because they're lined up, these are not connected. They're connected vertically if you're looking at it that way. And then we are going to find port 12, and we're going to connect that to the positive lead of the LED light. And before I connect it to the power and the computer, let's take a look at the program. So I already wrote the program. And this consists of 2 parts, the setup and the loop. In the setup, you're going to tell Arduino board what you're going to be using and for what. So in here we're saying pin number 12 is going to be the output, so that means the power is going to go out. And that's all we're using in this circuit. So we're going to loop section, where we're going to tell Arduino that port 12, turn it on, meaning provide power so that the word is high. Then there's going to be a delay of about 500 milliseconds. That means it's going to still be turned on. And then the next command is to turn the LED off, so that word is low on port 12. And a delay again of about 500 milliseconds. And as the function is called loop, it will loop until there is no power to the board. So let me connect it. And let's make sure that the program is correct. So we click on verify. And there is no errors in the bottom of the screen. So now we are going to click on upload. And again, there is no errors. So now let's take a look and see if the circuit is doing what the program we were telling them to do. And there is the flashing LED.